Hi everyone, it's Catherine. Welcome back to our A Clash of Kings discussion. Sorry we're a bit late. We were chatting. Naturally. We were just saying that we probably won't have very much to say about the chapters this week because they're very plot focused. Just a couple of things here and there, but yeah. Next week we're reading all the way from Davos 3 to Arya 10, and it's our second last week next week. And this week we're going from Jon 6 to Sansa 5. And I didn't realize that we had 2 Jon chapters and 2 Sansa chapters in this week's fight. Yeah, it's pretty good. A lot of the chapters are preoccupied with the death of Bran and Rickon. So at least 3 of the chapters are preoccupied with that. But there's a lot going on. So Clare.
Yeah, so the build up in these chapters to the battle. So that's all taking place, which means it's great because there's lots of action. Hi, Ivan. Well, that looks like a nice big cup. And so because there's a lot of action, there's not a great deal of it's quite fast paced. And I think we're going to be coming up to this as well soon. There's a slew of chapters that are back to back, Tyrion, Sansa. So all the stuff that's taking place in King's Landing. But there's still a few things though that I've got from these chapters. The Jon one, well, this is in this chapter. Jon meets Ygritte, so this is the big thing that happens in this chapter. So they're climbing the Skirling Pass, and they come across the camp of wildlings, and they kill them, and they realise that Ygritte is a woman. And basically Corran tells Jon, you know, at the end, you decide what to do or you deal with it. One of the things that jumped out at me first of all was just from a house polish point of view, when he was climbing the wall and ripped open a thumbnail. It was like, oh, ow, that's just no. So that was painful. What made me smile about this chapter is this is Jon getting ready for his first battle. So this is like him growing up and becoming a man and engaging in this like battle and preparing himself for it. And what features in this is Ygritte. So it's almost like his first battle is also his first love as well at the same time.
Yeah. Which says a lot.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Poor Jon and poor Ygritte. So she's obviously knows what's going on a bit more behind the, beyond the wall, or as she says, like Winterfell when she referred, and this happened in the TV show as well. It depends on where you're standing, and that this is again one of those great quotes that's a metaphor for the entire series. It depends on where. It depends on where you're standing, who's good, who's bad, what the theories are, all that kind of thing. Then we hear about the tale of Bale the Bard.
Which takes up a good chunk of this chapter, actually.
It does. And so we get to find out a little bit more about this. There seems to be this ongoing theme of, and it's that it happens a lot in these types of huge, mega epic series where it's like, has this all happened before? Is history just repeating itself? Sins of the father, that kind of thing. So this is one of those things, is the constant battle between the Starks and the king beyond the wall. So whoever the Lord of Winterfell is and the king beyond the wall. And there seems to definitely be where they're related. And Ygritte is pointing this out really in this tale is, look, the point of the moral of the story is we're not that different from each other. And of course, later on in the story, we can see how this has maybe influenced Jon's thinking when he is the Lord Commander. So yeah, we get to hear about Brandon the Daughterless and the story of the king beyond the wall who comes to Winterfell and pretends to be a singer, and he's so good that the Lord of Winterfell says, you know, take your pick of what you would take your prize, and he takes the, you know, he has the best blue winter rose, and then his daughter disappears, and then you get the, you know, I won't go through the whole thing, but the song does there's lots of aspects about this story, and one of the ones that I've highlighted just for what we're going through at the moment is that the song does very much foreshadow Bran and Rickon hiding amongst the dead in the crypts, and the Boltons. The Boltons, we should know as readers at this point that they are primed so much to be Turncloaks, and it's written here within this story.
Yeah.
And pretty much that's all I've got really for this chapter. It's Jon's first love and first battle, and we get this history about, effectively we're the same. Our histories are entwined. You know, we have a shared common, we share the same gods, we potentially share the same blood. Yeah, so this is obviously making Jon think, and this helps him maybe take his position later on.
Yeah,
that's all I've got really. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't really have a huge amount either. I was trying to find there, he makes a joke about his mother and not knowing who his mother is. It's somewhere at the beginning of this chapter, and I couldn't find it.
Oh, some woman.
Yeah.
But
it's something, I think Corin says you'll know the mountain like you'll know your own mother or something, or the mother's a mountain, and he says, oh, I don't even know my mother or something. And it's just like, wow, when did we start joking about you being a bastard? Where did all the pain go? It's like, oh, okay, so you realize there's worse things in the world. Couple of things about Ygritte. By the way, Ygritte, a total badass. I am not entirely sure if I love her portrayal in the show. While I really like the actress, I think the problem is the actress is super posh in real life.
She is,
so I don't know if she sells the accent in the show. And I heard the accent in the show before I ever heard her voice, and it never really sat with me. I don't know. I'm not English, so I don't know if it's overdone.
Well, from somebody from the north with a northern accent, I would say she does a pretty good job at pulling it off. And I was surprised actually. It was what was she in? She was in another series here that I watched.
Oh yeah, she was in something else.
God. But where she did have her voice, it was like a very posh accent.
Was she in Luther? Maybe? No, I don't know. She was in some crime.
Yeah. She was also in some like quite an arty series, which was all about. It was like this virus thing that had taken over, and it was all this kind of Illuminati stuff. But it was shot in a very artsy kind of way. Can't even remember what it was called now, but it was good. And she was in that, and she had a very clipped, Queen's English kind. It was like, oh wow!
I know. I'm expecting her to show up in The Crown.
I think she was in something as well that was about Alan Turing. I think she was. I remember her being in something that was like historic, like 1950s kind of thing. But she portrays a pretty good.
I do love her, I think, and she's gorgeous. I mean,
it's kind of like she does like a Yorkshire accent. That's what she, that's what she does. But she, it's okay.
Like, them together, they're a gorgeous couple.
They're getting married in real life.
Life, but she's brilliant, and I love the character in the book, and she's such a badass. The way she's like, you just kill me now, whatever. And also, while she's telling him the story about Bale the Bard, can you just shut up and let me tell the story, please?
Yeah.
Just a couple of things to know about her. He notes that she has really white teeth, and I just think this is quite interesting because I think we get quite a false impression of the wildlings at times. That they're savages, and the suggestion here being that actually maybe they have a really good diet in comparison to some of the North, who are probably eating a lot of grains, which is really bad for your teeth. Whereas, somebody, the wildlings probably have a decent enough kind of very protein-based diet where like they have, where they have this kind of going on. The whiteness of her teeth kind of stood out to me. The what else did I have here? Oh yes. I was just wondering. So John lets her go, and yeah, I think John is still coming from very patriarchal society where he can't really bring himself to killing a woman. I didn't fully get why he let her go. Really, I mean, it kind of, but not really. And I just wonder. It seemed to me like she's definitely manipulating him the whole time, and she's very, very good at that. The other thing is, and this is the last thing I have on this chapter. Hey, Bran, how's it going? Oh, bring as many people as you can. That would be brilliant. Hi, Barbara. Ygritte sounds like my son-in-law from York. I understand half what he says sometimes. There is this mad theory out there that Mance Rayder is Rhaegar. I don't know if you've heard this theory.
Yes,
it's a mad theory. Yeah.
I was going to talk about this actually.
Because there's something in this chapter that, it's because she talks a lot about Rhaegar and that Mance, and that he would accept him if John went to him. He would accept John. And I don't know. There was something about the way it was put to him, and just the mention of the mother very flippantly at the beginning of this chapter. Well, it made me think. Yeah. And then she knows that he's a Stark. She knows about Ned. This seemed to me like a very fathered-focused chapter. Like John is defined through who his father is, which is what's true of most people in this book. But yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily buy it, but I think if you read between the lines, maybe you can get there.
You've not missed much, Bran the Builder. We are on the first chapter. We're talking about John meeting Ygritte for the first time, and her telling him about Bale the Bard. So really, it's just the John's first battle, and how interesting that it's also his first love that he meets in his first battle. And we're talking about the song foreshadowing lots of different things as well. So
I'm interested to know where do you stand on that tinfoil theory, or do you think there's anything to it? I think it's tinfoil.
I don't know, because I've got more of this in the next chapter. Actually,
okay, well we'll talk about it in the next
John
chapter.
7.
Yeah, okay.
But I want to pick up on that connection though between Mance and John. I've actually got here, could Mance and John be related? But I don't think that's necessarily because Mance is somebody else. But we can get to that later.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, because I completely forgot that he was, because we find out in the next chapter, but I completely forgot that he was an escaped wildling at the Night's Watch. So, Bran, there's beer if you want there to be beer.
I'm actually on Dandelion and Burdock.
Oh, what's that?
It's okay. Well, it must be a very English thing then.
Never heard of it.
It's a fizzy drink, but it's quite it's got like a botanical, quite a herbal taste to it. But it's dandelion and burdock, which is another weed kind of thing.
Rose and Kit will be serving at the wedding.
It sounds very posh, but it's not really.
Hi, Arya. Nice to have you here. Okay, so Bran thinks that Rhaegar might be Stark. Okay, let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
Because let's talk about that when we get to John 7. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Bran. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Claire. So will we move on to Sansa 4 then? Because I didn't have anything else, because we went through the Bale the Bard stuff a couple of weeks ago when it was mentioned by Craster. So all right, let's head off to Sansa. But before we go, Bran says, I've heard about dandelion beer. I actually want to try it. Oops, no. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about Sansa and her lovely Sir Dantas, who's a bit of a, I don't know, bit of a wet blanket, this fella. He has a theory that Moon Boy is one of Varys's men.
Yeah, well, that can be quite interesting later on.
Yeah.
So yeah, Moon Boy is in Varys's employ. But I mean, oh my God, they're all whispering in each other's ears. It's like a nest of vipers in King's Landing, and in Tyrion's chapter, we see how they get it spectacularly wrong as well.
Sorry, Bran corrected me. I said Rhaegar is a Stark. Yes, sorry, I meant Mance is a Stark. Sorry, Bran, thank you. Now we're going to have secret Starks instead of secret Starks.
But yes, I think I just picking up on what you were saying about previously about what you were saying about how can Stannis think that the small folk and the rest of Westeros will swallow this completely new religion that he's bringing, and as we see in this chapter, they don't. Dontos is saying that, you know, a lot of people seem to see the Red Woman or the Red Witch as evil and in control of Stannis. Well, we kind of do as readers at this point. But just going back to, like, how did Stannis ever think that he was going to be more popular than Renly, or that he could get more numbers, or that he could ever just kind of, I mean, I know that he's got this thing about it's mine by rights. It's, you know, and he's very, he's a stickler for the rules, definitely. But he must have been able to see that that was almost an impossible task.
Yeah, that's my big question from this chapter, that he burns the Godswood and think it's okay to do that. It made me think of two things. First of all, exactly what you're saying, that the small folk, like how are they expected to swallow that? The Targaryens didn't even do that, and they're fire and blood, and they didn't burn, you know, the Godswoods. My thing with this is, will this be the thing that trips him up? Will the burning of the Godswood trip him up, in the sense that we are going into Winds with a battle of ice coming up? How much of that will come back to kick him in the ass? How much karma will be reaped from that, in terms of potentially some forces working through the Godswood, whether it's Bran or Three Eye Raven or whatever, working through the Godswood in a way that scuppers Stannis or brings Stannis down, is very key to Stannis's failure. Although I know a lot of people think he'll win that battle, I don't ever think I don't know. Even if he wins the battle, he won't win the war.
No.
If that makes sense. But yeah, that was my big question here. Is there still karma? Is there still going to be retribution here through the Godswood, through the forces of the Godswood, for what he does? That because do we hear of any other destruction of the Godswood by anyone in recent centuries? I don't think so. Like, this is a big deal. Anybody in the chat, do you know if there's any?
When Winterfell is burned down, do they? I don't think they burn the Godswood, do they?
I don't think so.
And again, like, why, you know, the Boltons are from the north, so they probably wouldn't. But that sounds quite interesting, Bran the Builder.
It does, actually, yeah.
No, they didn't. But no, I don't think there has been, and I think it is a complete affront to that. There's some kind of divine retribution there, and I think that would be quite poetic, because there's a lot of readers that are really rooting for Stannis,
Yeah.
Even though he had a bit of a tricky beginning, you know, there's the burning of the gods and there's, you know, kinslaying, and, you know, he gets up to no good really at the beginning of his story.
Do you think
But
Stannis is a bit of a Cromwellian figure?
a little bit, yeah. I think there's going to be like a shocking tragedy, but I hope, I just as a Stannis fan, I hope that something heroic happens with Stannis. If he's taken off the page completely, because we've had so much invested, I would hate it to be the way they did it in the TV show, because that just I couldn't. It took me a while to come back from that.
I think a lot of people are feeling like that. I'm worried about it. Bran the Builder. I looked into it, and there is no reference of Godswood in the Dreadfort and Boltons. Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Or religion. Yeah, they may have something else going on there. Anyway, they're all vampires, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all zombie.
So there's, apart from that talk with Sir Dantas, there's also this big moment with the Hound. You know, that really changes her thinking about the Hound, I think. Although this is the first time we've seen them talk since he rescued her. And he tells her that there's no such thing as a true knight, or that no one is a true knight anymore, at least. And of course, then Sansa has the biggest moment of her life, which is her flowering.
Yes.
Which is always like the weirdest thing to call it.
I think is interesting that you know what, if I'm not like a hardened Sansan, but if I was, I would be saying, look, it's quite easy here to say, you know, that she has to run into Sandor the night that she kind of becomes a woman, you know, and she's forcing herself to look at him and talk to him, and there's lots of whether it's in a dream or whether she's remembering it or whether other people are referencing it, there seemed to be, in my mind, this very knightly act of swooping in and saving her from the bread riots, and then saving her again when she nearly falls off the ramparts here in this chapter. And she starts to, she's not just looking at him in terms of like the, you know, Joffrey's creature and how brutal he is. She's actually starting to think to herself about the hate in his eyes and where that comes from, and later on she's praying for that to be taken away from him. So, you know, and this is like, well, is this a definitive chapter of Sansa growing up because a first Moonblood arrives? But there's a bit of there's some extra feeling in there, I think. You know, when she thinks of Dorian being the she thinks of Dontos being Florian and saving her, and she thinks that, you know, she wishes that he was a bit more like the Hound. He had more of the qualities of the Hound. So I think it would be easy to see from a Sansan perspective that, yeah, this is where you know, he's her, you know, knight in shining armor. But I think it's more that it kind of feels to me that, I mean, she describes him as a half wild, mean-tempered dog. And I just think, I wonder if it's almost like she's lost one dog, she's lost Lady, and it's replaced by this other like protective force, which happens to also be, you know, this pseudonym of the dog. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's like more like her spirit guide, and he doesn't realize it, she doesn't realize it, but there's this connection between them that isn't necessarily romantic, but she's looking for a knight and he's looking for someone to save. You know, that kind of, there's a connection there.
And he makes it sound like it's no effort to do that.
Yeah.
He laughs when, you know, they had no hope against me. You know, it's like but I think it's costing him a great deal, actually. He's hanging around, I think, to see her, because she's a decent person. And I'm as Bran the Builder says, that he's cool with Sansa, and I'm cool with it as well. And I'm with you, Bran. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think that he'll still do something for her.
Yeah,
there's still another interaction left in this series. And maybe it ties in what Cersei says to her at the end of this chapter, telling her that love is poison, you know.
And if it did tie in with what we've mentioned previously around the Valonqar could be Sandor, and if you link that back to the legend of, not the legend, the story of you know, the origins of House Clegane, and that it was a lioness that the dogs had to attack and brought down in defense of House Lannister. So maybe what happens if you kind of mirror that to now in the story is Sandor is the Valonqar. His heroic act is getting rid of Cersei on behalf of Sansa, because she effectively is a Lannister.
Yes, that's true.
So in a roundabout way, that could quite neatly tie that up. But who knows? You know, the world and anyone could be the Valonqar.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tweeting that, Bran. I don't use Twitter, so thank you very much.
Hi, Jules.
I could see him becoming a stand-in for Lady the Lost Wolf. Yeah, I like that, the Lost Wolf. Hi, Jules. You definitely did hear Sandor, and we'll definitely be talking, I'd say, more about Sandor later. What did you think of the interaction with Cersei and Sansa? I feel like in this chapter and in the next Sansa chapter, there's definitely going to be a connection. Like, there's definitely, I think Cersei gives her good advice. It's horrible, but I think she's definitely giving her good advice in both chapters. It's not the nicest thing to hear, but I think for somebody like Sansa, where in the position she's in right now, love is kind of poisonous. We'll see that with Joffrey, obviously, he doesn't love her. But Littlefinger later on, for sure. Yeah. Like, Littlefinger's love is not something you want.
I think who would be the last person that you'd want motherly advice from when you first started your period? It wouldn't be Cersei Lannister.
No. And also, speaking of her period, sorry to have period thought, but it's quite painful for her, and it lasts quite a long time. It goes into the next chapter. Now, I don't know how many days that is, but that's quite long for a first period. So that suggests one of two things. Either she's incredibly fertile, or she's going to have problems with fertility. Often heavy, painful periods mean one of those two things. So yeah, that should be something that could be something we have to watch out for. Bran says, "Oh, should have known Sandor being said in 200-mile radius." You show up, Jules. Jules, you're a big Sandor fan. And Maggie the Frog might be pretty weird. Yeah. So that's it really for this Sansa chapter. I mean, it's the next Sansa chapter where all the action happens, for sure, with the battle. It's interesting that we get the battle starting through Sansa's eyes.
Yeah. But I think, again, it's just that, like, thinking about what Sansa has lost and what she's got around her that she's trying to so she's lost her mother, and she's got Cersei there as this kind of pseudo giving her motherly advice. And again, you've got to think about, why is Cersei doing that? Is it just for her own entertainment? Is she genuinely trying to impart wisdom from her own experience, her perspective? And the replacement again of so, you know, this is what Sansa's lost in her life, and this is what she's desperately looking around to sort of replace. So Sandor may be the replacement protector you know, in lieu of lady. And
I will agree with Cersei. I think she said it earlier in the book as well. I don't think Kat did a very good job of preparing Sansa.
No, I don't think so.
I really don't think so. And do you have a Lannister driving you mad there?
Yeah, just have to let her out. That's actually Brienne. She's so loud.
Oh God, it's even worse.
She just screams in your face. If you ignore her, it's like, no, you can't ignore her. She will literally just scream in your face. She's so demanding.
Yeah, no, it is, because later on when we in the cat chapter, she talks about brushing Sansa's hair. She'd send away the maids, and yeah, but you're not there to brush her friggin' hair. You're supposed to be giving her advice, you know. She's not like Cersei. A big part of Cersei's problem is she didn't have a mother around to give her advice on what to expect from this very male-dominated world. And yeah, I do think Cat let Sansa down in certain sense. Bran says he has no horse in this race. Yeah, so well, we all have a horse in the next race, or a direwolf, or an eagle in John 7. So, guys and girls, if you have any questions in the chat, be sure to ask us. Do you have anything else then from this Sansa chapter?
Yeah, Arya Stark. I read the same thing. I love the idea of Sansa, but George has said in an interview it took him by surprise. He said in an interview, "Oh, I heard this rumor about the potential of Sansa and Sandor." That, you know, and he said he was shocked by it. I mean, that could be a double bluff, Arya, possibly, but I think, you know, yeah. I think I can see why it's there, but I just think no. There's a connection, but I don't think it's going to be as the Sansa fans think it's going to be. I mean, there's fan fiction and everything, like real pornographic kind of.
Yeah, and I do think the show is already giving us that big red flag that there's such a massive age difference between the actors. The age difference isn't that great in the books, but it's massive on the show. So I think that's a big sign that it's that it's not going to happen. But okay, so John 7. Okay. So guys and girls, we're on John 7. If you have any questions coming in, because there's a good few things in John 7 actually. For a short chapter, there's quite a bit here. So we have we learn then that Mance was a wildling captured by the Watch, which I kind of forgot. I don't know why I forgot that, but yeah, so he was captured by the Watch. Very, very good friends then. He was a good brother, but he had a taste for wildling women. So I am going to let you take this away and tell me what your
just leading on from that, really, that we hear from Corin, who obviously knew Mance very well. This is the chapter as well, by the way, where we start to get the sense that Jon has got warging abilities as well. So there's a lot of kind of old magic, you know, around in this chapter. And there's a couple of things to make note of here that there's been several references to Jon having this affinity with the North and this kind of magical connection with it. He just seems to have this sense of how important it is, or that there is something important beyond the wall, more than any of the other siblings did. So when they picked the direwolves up in the very first chapter, Jon seemed to have more of an understanding of what it meant to be in the Night's Watch and what was happening with these deserters. That scene outside of Craster's keep where he wakes up in the morning and everything's like covered with ice and just very magical kind of moment, whereas you would in reality be moaning and groaning like Ed, Dolores said, about how cold you are, and Jon just seems to see the beauty and the magic beyond the wall. And there's a definite so that's the connection. Mance and Jon both seem to have an affinity with Beyond the Wall. Mance loved the Wild better than the Wall, And it's kind of like, in a way, you could argue that maybe Jon did. You know, if you think about Jon's adventure so far, he spent a considerable amount of time with the wildlings beyond the wall. He fell in love. He's almost had like a second life, you know, and then he comes back to the Watch and they kind of begrudgingly accept him, and it takes a while. And you could say, you know, what kind of, I wonder whether Jon preferred being in the wild rather than at the wall. And then he even kind of acknowledges to himself, Corin says that Mance never learned to obey. That was his problem. He was a good guy. You know, we were all friends with him, but he just never learned how to obey. There was something about, you know, the wild about him. And Jon thinks to himself, no more than me. Like, yes. I also break the rules. So there's this build up, I think, in this chapter of the suggestion that Jon and Mance could be related. So of course you think, well, this is where people come up with the theory that Rhaegar is glamoured as Mance, and my head starts spinning then. I remember James and LaDonna talking about this, and it's like, okay, so what you're saying is Mance, so you're saying Rhaegar and his rubies somehow mean that
I'm laughing because I can't get my head around it either.
Mance is glamoured, but then later on he's also so it's like he's double glamoured. That's just too much for me, because he's glamoured later on, isn't he? Actually, in the books with Mel and what's he called, Rattlebones, whatever he's Rattleshirt. That's it. So it's like, really, would you use the same thing again twice? Somebody, you know, it's like, how many times can you glamour someone before it's like, really? So I don't think that is the case. I don't think he is Rhaegar, but I think there could be some blood connection between Mance and Jon. There does seem to be a lot of similarities between them. And the story of the only thing that it could possibly be is we know that Mance has been to Winterfell before and reenacted almost to this tale of Bale the Bard. So he's been there and pretended to be the singer, the musician. He's been to sort of observe or whatever, for whatever reason he's gone, he's been there to see what's going on at Winterfell. Could that have happened could that have happened a few times? Could he have just gone in and out of Winterfell as he wanted, pretending to be other people, pretending to be a travelling minstrel or whatever, and something happened between him and Lyanna there, maybe? You know, who knows? So if I think that there could be, I'm not saying there is, and that there's a theory or anything like that. I'm just saying from what I'm seeing in this chapter, it makes me feel as though there could be a blood relative connection between Mance and Jon. Now, whether that means that, like Bran the Builder is saying, he thinks he's a Stark,
yeah,
or a Snow, actually, yeah. So maybe Mance could be a Stark bastard.
Could he be a bastard child of Rickard?
Rickard, possibly. Yeah.
Well,
he would only be, wouldn't it, be given his age? Yeah.
Given his age, yeah. So that's what I kind of thinking.
That could be a reason that, you know, we're always searching for this reason of why did Benjen go to the wall. Maybe that's connected somehow to that reason.
Possibly, yeah.
So
I mean, everybody knows him. So it's one of those characters everybody in the North knows who he is. And he hasn't really done anything yet, but we hear of him back in Bran 1 of A Game of Thrones. On the very first page,
yes, we do.
Bran's chapter, we hear Mance Rayder's name before he's even done anything.
Yeah.
So anything of significant, like, influence or effect on the North, like on the North, as in Winterfell. So it suggests to me that he's definitely spoken about around Winterfell, and one of the only reasons why he would be, I guess, is if there's a secret there about his birth, that'd be kind of scandalous to gossip about him. More than him just being the king beyond the wall. There's something else there.
I think so. I think so. And then there's this thing later, much later on, that we've mentioned before, that's dropped into the conversation with Sam and Gilly in Feast, where he kind of very casually says that the baby is Mance's son and Craster's grandson. And you just kind of don't take it in until you go back and go, well, hang on a minute. That means that Darla is one of Craster's daughters. What?
Yeah.
That could only be, that combination could only be if that baby is Craster's grandchild. It gets a bit confusing, but
and just to go back to what you were saying there about his love of the North and everything, that's definitely confirmed in Jon's initial reaction in Jon 6 to Ygritte, because one of the first things we learn about Mance in this chapter is that he loves wildling women, and he loves the wilding way of life and stuff. Bran says, Arya says, George does use the same tropes. For example, baby swapping. He did with Manus, well as fake real Aegon. Yeah. And Bran says, I think it would be Brandon and Rickard's brother. Is he that old? Is Mance that old? Okay. Bran the Builder says also old Nan's story focuses on Lord Rickard.
Did Rickard have a brother?
That's interesting.
Did Rickard have a brother called Bran? Was there another Brandon that was Rickard's brother? I wasn't aware of that. I think there is a Bran in pretty much every generation, isn't there?
Yeah, they're very.
So that could be the case. It could be that Mance is his uncle rather than his father. But again, that kind of like the bastard status. Old Nan focuses on Lord Rickard and a younger or older brother Brandon. Right? Okay. Right. I didn't realise that. Yeah. And Arya's saying could be Bran. Catelyn makes it clear that it's not. Yeah, that it's not the. Can't read.
It's not that Ned had bastards that upset her. It's the fact that he brought home the bastard. That's what upset her. When Ned brought home Jon. So that means that even among the Starks there are bastards. Yeah, and I think we've said it over and over again in our discussions. Yeah. We have a very rose-tinted version of the Starks through this series. The Starks before, they were kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And so, and that doesn't mean to have bastard kids means you're a shitty person. But they're definitely not the honorable people that Ned's kind of brood is leading us to believe. Unfortunately, the Starks are not very creative when it comes to names. No, they're like the royal family in Britain. There's a lot of Georges and Edwards and there's
So didn't they take the Wall took Mance in as a baby, as a wildling baby?
Yeah. No, it said child, I think, or boy. Well, maybe it said boy. It could be either, I guess. But who would raise him if he was a baby?
I wonder if that's a thing that if the Starks have bastards, they'd send them to the Wall.
Yeah, and they said that about Craster's kids, that Mormon says they would have taken the boys. He's sacrificing them.
Yeah. So,
I mean, maybe instead of the Starks sacrificing their kids as they did in generations past, they give them to the Wall.
Yeah. That
could be possible. Aziz says no. Well, I trust everything Aziz says. Aziz says no, but I can't see Bran not knowing his grandfather was an only child. Yeah, I can definitely see that. If you don't know who Aziz is, that's History of Westeros History. One of my favorite channels. They're so great. And yeah, the Conquerors of the North. That's what Arya is saying about them. Yeah, I definitely think Jon's dream is really important here, as you mentioned, with him walking. It's really, because this is going to be amped up as well, this kind of skin changing ability. And I wonder, are his powers heightened as he gets further north? But also, I mean, I think we all kind of agree, maybe within the fandom, that the three-eyed raven is definitely responsible for sending the direwolves, and it could be that he's encouraging this dream. It seems to me that he is encouraging this dream and encouraging Ghost to see what the actual threat is, to see this wildling force. And it's interesting. Well, Jon is definitely surprised that the other brothers believe him and want to know more about his dream. And it's very different to Bran's experience in Winterfell with Lewin. Then there's no Lewin around to like make you lack confidence, you know.
It's almost like, well, this is why you're here. You've got your dire wolf. We were expecting this. Here it comes. Here's the foot. Let's all gather round and listen to this first wolf dream. That's kind of what it feels like. And also, you know, Corran was saying, you know, you're coming on this mission with us, you better get your wolf ready. So they're all primed and ready. It's kind of almost like they know who,
and not just them,
what he's capable of, what his powers might be.
And not just them, but the wildlings. As soon as they know that Jon is a Stark and he's a direwolf, shit, we've got to take him out. So I assume they attack Ghost with the eagle, and that's how Ghost gets injured in this chapter, right? That's how I read this. Because they do injure Ghost, but they don't take him out. And they come up with this plan that that Dalbridge is going to... Dalbridge, is that how you say it?
Yes, Squire Dalbridge, yeah.
Yeah, that he's going to sacrifice himself. And basically, Corran is basically, they're going to give themselves up to the wildlings. They're going to get caught. And he's got this whole plan, I guess, worked out in his head. Yeah. But, there's... anybody else, anything on this for Jon's first warging?
Well, I just on Squire Drawbridge, I do think it's quite poetic that we hear from Corran that he started as a squire for a king. That's why they call him Squire Drawbridge. And you could argue that he also dies in service of another king. Maybe he doesn't realise that. But, you know, if Jon ultimately ends up being king, or, you know, so he died almost kind of still doing like squirely duties in service of a king. So I'm thinking, is Jon, just going back to the warging stuff, is Jon the strongest warg out of the Stark siblings?
Yes.
He definitely seems to have I feel that the link that, now here's the question, the link that Jon has, the warging link that Jon has to Ghost, is it stronger because Jon was maybe the firstborn and Ghost was the firstborn? Or is it just because he's older? And when we read Bran's connecting to Summer, it's a very kind of almost like a childish thing. And even when we see Summer through Summer's eyes in Bran's dreams, it's almost like he can't get his words formed properly. Whereas Ghost seems quite mature.
Yes,
I know it's like the mingling between Jon and Ghost seems.
There's no line.
No, there isn't, and it's kind of like the weirwoods there as well, saying Jon, and the weirwood sprouted up from nowhere. But it's like he's thinking from Ghost's perspective, but Ghost seems quite mature and has these words and ideas already formed in his head about what to do and what, you know, he's just the way he's describing what he's seeing is very different from Summer when we're kind of have that point of view of Bran warging Summer.
I think Bran is this obviously has the strongest power of all of the Starks, but I don't think he is the strongest connection with his direwolf necessarily.
Right.
I think Robb potentially has a much stronger ability to warg. We just don't know it. And I think Preston Jacobs had up or was it Preston Jacobs or All Ship Decks? One of those channels a couple of weeks ago had up a video about, does Robb warg into Greywind in the last moments? Does he live a second life in the last moments?
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Greywind. Yeah. I definitely think the problem with Bran is, well, if you see it as a problem, he's not exclusively warging into Ghost. He also wargs into Hodor. So I don't know like he can obviously do stuff with Ghost, but I think the thing with Jon is Jon and Ghost have had that connection from the very beginning. The only reason the only reason Ghost is in the story is because Jon can feel him there. Jon goes back for him at the beginning of the Game of Thrones. So,
do you think that it's in the dream Ghost howls, so he makes a noise? Did you pick up on that?
Yes.
So he actually makes a noise, yet he's mute and nobody ever hears anything. You know, he doesn't make any noise. Is this because Jon can hear him? Like only Jon? Almost like that, again, that warging sense of he lifts his head up to howl because for his siblings, because he's missing, you know, he feels lost and incomplete without his other direwolf siblings. So he's howling and mourning. So is it? I could kind of do you see what I'm? It's kind of. Is it only Jon who can like hear that pain and anguish, and that's why we hear it in the Ghost howled in the dream.
Like we've talked about this. We talked about this. I think it was last week with Bran. Is it Bran inside Ghost when he's with Ghost? Like I feel it's still him. Like he definitely refers to his brother being with him all the time. Bran does, and we assume that's Rickon inside of Shaggy Dog, not just Ghost or not just Summer thinking that's my brother, as in Shaggy Dog. But I definitely think with Jon, it's, as you're saying, it's way stronger. It's he hears him howling because they are so bonded psychologically. That's how I feel it is anyway. And when he wakes up and the first thing he says is Ghost, he knows that Ghost has been injured. And it's not going to be, I don't think it'll be the last time he'll wake up and say Ghost.
No.
So,
but I think Bran's right that Ghost was the first direwolf Ghost had his eyes open. The other direwolves didn't yet, which indicates that Ghost was the firstborn, which indicates that Jon is older than Robb.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about Robb actually pretty soon, coming into Theon's chapter with Grey Wind. And I do think I think they're, and Arya with Nymeria, there's a lot of the only one who's probably the weakest.
Hello? You frozen, cat?
That much of. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, you froze then.
Oh, sorry. Did I? Oh, sorry. I wasn't. I say the only one we don't really see warging is Sansa into Lady, because
right.
Well, I mean, in saying that though, I think we only have one chapter in a Game of Thrones where Sansa has Lady around her and she's just always there.
Yeah.
And Lady to embody a lot of the same characteristics that Sansa has. So what does it mean then that Ghost can't howl when he's just Ghost? What does that say about Jon as a character?
I think he's a strong warg. I think he's the firstborn, which may mean that he is the strongest of the wargs. I think that Bran is a strong green seer. And they're all supposed to
got in on the stream. Sorry, guys.
they're all supposed to have warging abilities, the Stark siblings. And I just think for me this chapter indicates that the connection there between Jon and Ghost is probably the strongest, even if it's, I mean, this is the first experience of it really that we know anyway on the page. This, he dreams something that he knows is real, that's happened.
And I think further evidence for that is that Jon doesn't tell us he's warging unless he is seeing something that he needs to see as Jon, if you know what I mean. So he needs to see these wildling forces as Jon Snow, which suggests that if he is warging all of the time and he's just out and about hunting, he doesn't need to be conscious of that in the same way that Bran does. Bran needs it because he doesn't get to walk. He needs to feel like he's out and about, and also there is that bit of separation that he's going to be somewhere for a while. Yeah. Whereas Jon and Ghost are so melded together that is that even a word, melded? They're so together that Jon never needs to be consciously aware of it unless there's something very important. I do want to point out the coolest T-shirt ever. This is Jon and
oh yeah, very cool.
And you can see at the bottom got the raven. So I definitely think that he's being led to certain, and I'm going to be talking actually. Yeah, maybe a bit about that later on in another Sansa chapter. I'm very sorry. For some reason, Bloodraven got into the stream, but we're all right now. Arya says we're missing all the chat here. Due to Bran's skin changing, he can never likely be inside Jon's mind. An additional presence, not in control. They're just there in as a magical presence. That's a really good point. And if it gets to the stage where someone needs to take out Bran for whatever reason, I don't necessarily think that could be a possibility, but you never know. It may have to be somebody like Jon that Bran is incapable of warging, that has to take him out, if you know what I mean. So it could be Arya or Jon, and Jon could definitely be without. He doesn't necessarily have to have the green sight. Maybe the green sight is what prevents Bran from becoming completely one with Summer. Okay, Ion. Hi, Ion. How are you?
Yeah, thanks, Ion, for putting the Rick Astley earworm into my head. That's not coming out for a good few hours. Together forever.
Oh my gosh, that's worse than have a Bloodraven in the stream. Yeah, I didn't really have anything. I just found it interesting that Eben and the guys just instantly.
Yes.
And we have this skin changer. Is this the first time skin changer has been mentioned? I don't think Jojen said skin changer, did he? He said warg, right?
Yeah, and was it beastling or there's some weird? They use some strange words.
All those frogmen are strange, you know.
Warg, yeah, definitely.
So
right, that's it. Should we move on to Tyrion?
Move on to Tyrion. Yeah, that's the end of Jon for this section. Yeah, we're moving on to Tyrion 12, and we have the awful news. And even though I know it's not true, it's still gut-wrenching. Tyrion's reaction to Bran and Rickon's death. He hears it from Varys, and instantly he just goes into Lannister mode. Oh, I'm gonna tell Cersei and see what her reaction is. And it's like, oh, come on, 2 kids have died.
Yeah. But again, as readers, though, if you're reading this for the first time, as readers, it's not. We do think that Bran and Rickon have been killed. It's not until the end of Theon's chapter that it's revealed as like, oh my God, right, okay. Even though we reread this as second and third, 50 odd time or whatever, and you can see it all lining up. You can see all the foreshadowing and the Bran and Rickon are okay. But at this point in the first read, as readers, we don't know. So it is all very kind of edge of the seat.
Yeah, no, totally.
You know, Theon has actually done this heinous thing, and yeah.
It is interesting as well in hindsight to compare Tyrion's reaction to Asha's later on. You know, like she really brings Theon down, like not just because he killed 2 kids, but she's like, you killed 2 princes.
Yeah.
Why the fuck am I I'm not sticking around here.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Like this can only go from bad to worse. There's nowhere else this can go. But again, you and I have been on the let's be a bit weary of Tyrion train.
You know what? I don't understand. I love Asha. I don't understand why they didn't just basically bundle him, basically tie him up and march him out of there. Just, you know, this is not. Anyway, we'll get to that chapter next.
It's a disaster, but yeah, we will get to next. But no, my point here is that you and I have been on the let's not jump aboard the Tyrion is a good guy train. And I think this is one of those moments that Tyrion was more upset that Winterfell fell to Theon than he is about the Stark kids being killed. He wants to use it to see if he can get a reaction out of Cersei. And also just the way even though he's bluffing, the way he talks about, potentially raping Tommen in this chapter.
Yeah, it's a piece of work. Yes.
Listen, Cersei is horrendously bad in this chapter, especially with what she's doing to Alayaya. But I mean, I don't know, Tyrion.
Out of the two of them, though, in a strange way, Cersei makes more sense to me in this chapter.
However, Cersei is playing games while Stannis is at the gates. I mean, back off.
But she needs reassurance that it's mounting. You can hear it, you can see it, you can see the enemy sails, you can see them gathering outside. So she's feeling it. The only person that she's got in her entire family at the moment is somebody that she just can't trust. She's not got a brother there, she's not got a father there, she's really lost at sea. But she doesn't want to admit that. She doesn't want to. That's something that she will never do. She needs to have Tyrion in her corner, and she can't. He's like vapor at the moment. She can't get hold of him. So what's the best way to make sure that he dances to her tune and he does exactly what she needs him to do? It's to take his whore. And I kind of, in that situation, I probably would have done the same thing. And I mean, she completely fucks it up and makes an entire, and again, as reader, you're thinking, yes, Tyrion's got away with it. But I'm rereading this completely differently this time. And
me too.
I'm kind of like, that poor girl, Alayaya.
Oh yeah, Alayaya, yeah. I do like. I totally hear you on the Cersei thing, and let's not forget that he's also taken her two favorite kids as well.
Yes.
Like the two
she's
nicest
got no
kids.
reason to trust him.
Two good things she's done in her life, because Joffrey, she's not owning that one anymore. But the other two, they're the only two good things, especially Marcella. And Tommen is so sweet and very, very, very young as well. Jules said, I never liked... Oh, thank you, Arya. Jules said, I never liked Tyrion. Just could not warm up to it. Yes, he's clever, but that's all I'll give him. Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, Bran, it's funny little monkey man. That's what they call him. Tyrion, Arya says, Tyrion becomes a great character once he thinks he might inherit Winterfell. And indeed, in the last chapter that we read, Ion, the gods roll dice when a Lannister is born to not just Targaryens. That is true. Hey AU, nice to see you. We're talking Tyrion, having a bit of an anti-Tyrion moment. It is a fantastic scene between Cersei and Tyrion.
She does everything that I mean, so Cersei, this chapter. It's just so Cersei. The fact that she even resorts to like flirting with him a little bit, which is like so creepy, especially when at the beginning of the chapter you get this another observation by Tyrion about how beautiful his sister is, and she always makes some observation about what she's wearing, and it's just like, whoa, that's creepy shit. And then she starts flirting with him just to make the point that men are weak and they're motivated by their worms, which Tyrion actually agrees with later on when he can't perform with Shay. But
yeah, I was trying to come up with a joke. Cersei doesn't get the upper hand she wanted, and Shay doesn't get the hand she wanted.
But it's funny, isn't it, how Shay just magically appears there? It's almost like this whole
such a
thing
bullshit artist. Yeah. She knows exactly how to get into that room. Oh, I saw tiles and it was under. Yeah, come on.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah,
you know how you got in there.
But Cersei needs Tyrion. Yeah. And the only way, she needs to be able to trust him and have him under some form of control like you say, he's already spirited away her kids, and it's like,
yeah, and it's one of these things
yeah,
that with the Lannisters, they're with all the bad and the conniving things that they're doing to one another, there's always like elements of truth and elements of good advice that get lost along the way. Like she tells him, don't trust Varys. He
yeah,
is a spider. He's given us all the information that we want, and that's going to be lost now because of this second game that she's playing.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
he's not, and she needs him to hear that as her hand. She needs him to hear it, not to trust Varys, especially because Shay is the reason, or Varys is the reason Shay is in his room after this. Um, yeah,
But Tyrion also realizes, I mean, this isn't the first time that he realizes that Varys possibly can't be trusted, because he finds out that Varys told Cersei that Tyrion had planned to take the Hound away from Joffrey, and you know, we can't have that because the Hound is you know, is needed and needed to protect Joffrey rather than be in battle. I mean, as it turns out, with the amount of fire and things like that, I know in the TV show that he just legged it when he saw the fire. But so Tyrion knows that you know, she's not really telling him that he doesn't, anything that he doesn't already know, but they're forging this some form of trust between them, even if it's that kind of, you know, enemy of my enemy, and let's just hold it together until Daddy comes along and takes charge and sorts all this shit out. But yeah, they're taking blows at each other, and in fact, Tyrion physically attacks Cersei in this chapter and threatens her, where he says, you know, a day will come where all, you know, the ashes in, you know, all that kind of thing.
that's right. And this is an important thing that they do in the show as well. A day will come where your joy will turn to ashes in your mouth. Yeah. So what do you think that is? Is that him killing Tywin, or do you think that's something else? Because it'll have to be something else, right?
Yeah, I don't know whether I mean, I think that's the reason why Cersei believes that Tyrion killed Joffrey later on, because that's she's probably recounting those words as Joffrey's dying in front of her. That's why she, what, you know, she gets she's got like a prize, hasn't she, on the head of Tyrion, and all these poor dwarves are brought to King's Landing. Because
I think
on the promise of a lordship from the whoever brings them, but it probably does mean something, and it's probably massively foreshadowing. You know, you think of ashes, it's always dragons and dragon fire, and who knows.
Because by the way, if you're not watching the show, just put your fingers in your ears, and the next time I do this, you can stop. You can stop. Because we believe at the end of the last series, the two of us believe that he is definitely working with her, and he is going to be Dany's next betrayal. Because he even says it to her in this chat. He says it to her. He is my nephew. I'm not going to do anything to them. I mean, for Tyrion, this is the closest he'd probably get to kids in his head. Like, this is, you know, he feels like he's the third parent with Jaime, and, you know, and I think he definitely thinks that in the show as well. So I don't know if they'll abandon that idea in the show, that he'll betray Cersei, or he'll turn her joy to ashes, or whatever it is. But yeah, there's something not quite right. Okay, you can do this again. Okay, we've stopped now. I've stopped now. All right. It's not really a spoiler. I don't listen to leaks or anything, but if you've already abandoned the show, it was maybe. So it's fine now. It's fine. We're back to the books. Okay. Bran says, shut. I presume he means shite, the Irish shit. Can't remember the order of events. This is why we're doing the reread. We've said that several times.
Yeah. That is a good metal band name, Joy to Ashes.
Yes, yeah. Bran says she...
That's a real emo name.
Yeah, it is, Joy to Ashes, yeah. Bran says, will she blow up King's Landing, or she will blow up King's Landing? Yeah, I think she will. Arya says, we are also being prepared for Cersei's death, and maybe she dies in the burning of King's Landing. We've also talked about the potential of her dying twice. maybe. Or there being 2 parts to her death. Bran says when she blows up King's Landing, it will be ashes. Yeah, and the joy there, you know, could be something to do with that. Thanks, Ion. Yeah, TV show spoiler alert is done now. And all right, so yeah, that's about all I had for this chapter. Actually, not much here.
Yeah,
why do you think he can't get it up with Shay? By the way, because it's not like him.
He's allowed his sister to infect his brain. That's what that is. And he, you know, he's starting to think, yeah, she's probably right. I do make a lot of my decisions based on this. And it is, you know, and she's trying to point out this is a man's weakness, and yeah, which, you know.
Yeah. I am to shock you, Clare Gray. The chapter with Kat this week was my favorite chapter.
Well, I've written most notes on this chapter than any other chapter that I've read.
Can I start this?
Yes.
Are we ready to move on to Kat? We're moving on to Kat 7 now. Can I start this with just reading a little piece from this? Of course, she's just discovered that Rickon and Bran are dead. And she says, she thinks to herself, well, there's like this feasting going on around her. I am become a sour woman. I take no joy in mead nor meat, and song and laughter have become suspicious strangers to me. I am a creature of grief and dust and bitter longings. There is an empty place within me where my heart once was. This, like, we were actually talking about dreaming before.
Don't cry! Don't cry!
I know. I'll just take it off. I need the vapors. We were talking about dreaming before we came on air, and I'm a lucid dreamer, and I often I'll have like these quite lucid dreams about losing my husband, and I get really like it's really emotional. And then I had to read Cat 7 after this. I was tears. And that line is like bitter longings, and she has no heart. I mean, there couldn't be more Lady Stoneheart in this chapter.
Do you think that she becomes Lady Stoneheart in this chapter?
I definitely think that there's a big thing in this chapter about her. I mean, it's such a great scene with her and Jaime. Such a great scene. And TV show spoiler alert time again. Put your fingers in your ears. There is a scene. One of my favorite parts last series was when Jaime interrogates Edmure. I know we talked to. I loved that scene. And I really hope we get that in the book or something like that, because it was so fantastic. And just that idea of, you know, the tables being turned for Jaime and him then interrogating a Tully. This scene, sorry, you can take your fingers out now. No more TV show. But this scene with Kat is fantastic. I think you're right. I think there's an element of her that definitely turns to Stoneheart in this chapter. For me, what did I write down here? She finds it really difficult. It takes a couple of pages for her to say out loud that Bran and Rickon are dead. She doesn't want to actually give voice to her worst nightmare and to the truth. And it's like when Jaime denies trying to kill Bran with the dagger, and she says no, that's not what happened, and she says out loud what she heard from Littlefinger and how the dagger ended up with Tyrion and him betting against Jaime. And she says in her head, no, that can't be right. When she says it out loud, she realizes, oh no, that's not the truth. And all of this has happened because she never said it out loud. She never said that ridiculous lie out loud so that she could hear that, oh, that's not right. That's the truth. That's the truth. The truth isn't like, that isn't right. And it completely, she's staggered by it.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense. And when she says out loud that Bran and Rickon are dead, it's almost like Kat has to say the truth out loud for it to be set free. And this is amazing, because later on, Lady Stoneheart will never be able to speak out loud and never be able to speak any truth. And so she'll always be a prisoner of truth.
With bitter longings.
Yes,
yeah.
And it's just, more than any other character, the foreshadowing is so thick with Cat, all the way from Game of Thrones. And I just loved the idea of the truth setting you free.
Yeah.
And for Cat, if she doesn't say it out loud, she's bottling it up. And it's almost as if she does kind of start, this is it now. This is her becoming Stoneheart. Whatever little bit of her left.
Yeah.
And she thinks Arya is dead. She's pretty much resigned herself to that fact. And she's given up on Sansa, pretty much. She uses past tense for them. It's a very, very dark chapter. And just the grief in the chapter, I mean, it won't come close to what we get in the Red Wedding, but she's a long way down the road of being Stoneheart already.
Yes.
The biggest thing with Stoneheart is the fact that her throat is cut.
Yeah.
I think that's what really confirms her as a prisoner of herself. Almost. If that made any sense. I don't know if that made any sense, but
completely.
Yeah. So I love Jamie. I know we're not supposed to like him, but I love him. He's just like, he's totally open. He tells her the truth, and we know it's the truth. And then he tells her this horrific story about how her first love died, Brandon, and she never knew. How did she never know this story? What was going on that they never knew?
Wow. This is all, I mean, a lot of this chapter, she's reminded constantly of having to do her duty. I must do my duty. I must do my duty. And it's almost like as she's always done. So this mission that Hoster sent her on to, she has extremely strong feelings for Brandon even now. And the fact that we find out that her father was absolutely apoplectic with rage when he found out that Brandon had just gone off like the wild wolf to King's Landing instead of marrying Cat. So this completely fucked up all of whatever Hoster's plans were, and for Cat to do her duty. But this exchange between her and Jamie, I mean, she doesn't care really at this point. I think she has become Lady Stoneheart. So they have this truth exchange, which is this, it's almost like a game between them. You know, you tell me one truth, I'll tell you one truth, but they both know that it is, you know, you have to just accept that what's happening here is the truth. And obviously Jamie wants to find out what's happening with Jamie wants to find out what's happening with his father and what's happening with the war, and you know how many Lannisters have died, and that. So there's this exchange between them of truths, and this is fascinating because we get a real insight into Jamie, really, I guess, for the first point here. And he's always, even in this squalor, and he looks just absolutely bedraggled, and he's, you know, she can still, even though she's become Lady Stoneheart, I believe, she still sees this power and beauty that's coming from him as Jaime Lannister, you know. So he's got this presence about him, even though he's been stuck in this horrible situation in the worst pit of the dungeons in Riverrun. So some of the things that come out in this truth exchange, he admits quite freely to being the children's father. He admits to just flinging Bran from the window because he was spying, and it's like, blame the gods for him being there. So he's very dismissive of all of that. But even though he's being a complete shit when he's saying all of this, he's telling the truth. And he's saying he didn't hire the cat's paw. So the dagger was nothing to do with Tyrion, and Peter was lying. As you say, it's like speaking it out loud. And then we get this conversation, which I'm sure in the books he has later on as well with Brienne. I know we get that bathhouse scene with Brienne in the TV show, where it's all about so many vows and how it's impossible to keep them all. And this conflict as a knight of doing your duty, but doing your duty to who? To the king, to the realm, to the weak, to the vulnerable. So we get this, we begin to get this idea that what does it mean to be a knight, and what does it mean to take these various vows. I've actually asked Kyle and Gemma to do a podcast on organizations within Westeros that have these vows, these historic vows.
And we don't know what their vows are. They're the most secretive vows.
Yeah.
The Kingsguard vows.
Yeah. But there's a lot. You've got the vows on the wall, you've got the Kingsguard vows, you've got the knightly vows, you've got even the pyromancer's vows and the meisters, you know, these like where the origins of these vows and where they came from. But he's absolutely right. It is impossible to keep all of these, you know, you can't, it's just impossible. You begin to get a picture of how things must have been from Jaime's point of view, and how history has this notion of him as the Kingslayer. That's the label he'll never be able to shake off. But what the actual truth was behind that. It's funny that one of the things that jumped out to me in this chapter is they go back to Brandon and the whole thing about how Brandon and Rickard died, and it's funny that in this chapter he talks about Brandon and Rickard, which just on a very simple level, to me, it does sound a lot like Bran and Rickon. Mm-hmm. And that's very fresh for Cat. So it's all all of this is extreme. It's a very, very, very emotional chapter, I think, this. He refers to Cat as Ned's sweet young bride, if not quite a maiden.
And she doesn't deny it.
She doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't.
She doesn't deny it.
And we're in this environment of this truth exchange.
Yep.
You know, they've created this safe little bubble for themselves where they can get information from each other. And neither of them are lying. They're both telling the truth.
Well, I mean, I've said this several times. Jon and Kat are two of the most honest POVs in the entire series, to the point that we won't ever need a Lady Stoneheart POV because we know Kat so well. We don't need to know Lady Stoneheart's point of view by the time we get there. And I know people won't want to hear this, but it's going to be the same for Jon. I am not expecting another Jon POV because I don't think if Jon comes back, I don't think we'll get Jon as Jon. I won't be surprised if we don't get a POV from him because we'll know Jon so well by the time we get there.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah,
usually am, but I think Kat and Jon, there's such a conflict between them, but they're so alike in so many ways, and in terms of how honest they are in their thinking. And she doesn't deny when he says that about Littlefinger. She doesn't deny it. And why wouldn't she? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
the other thing is as well that she remembers when just going back to Hoster and his plans and how incandescent with rage he was when Brandon buggered off to King's Landing, is she remembers the names of all the lords that went with Brandon and Rickard, including Jon Arryn's heir. And it's like, what? And she even surprises herself that she remembers that in such great detail.
Jon Arryn's heir. I forgot that bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's his heir?
Oh, it must have been like a nephew or something like that. But it was Jon Arryn had an heir.
Would it have been a Royce?
Possibly. Yeah.
Because we've talked about the Royces being tricksters. They're always around. There's always a Royce nearby. like they're like maesters. And just in relation, because this kind of mirrors the Ned Cersei scene from A Game of Thrones. You know, to have a Stark and a Lannister come together after all of this history. And whatever you think about Jaime and Cersei, and Jules Elizabeth says that Jaime is the only Lannister I actually love. I'm totally with you. I do think, though, even before we get POVs from Jaime and Cersei, they really are. They are what you get on the tin. Like they are themselves. There's never an agenda like there is an agenda, obviously, but they're never not themselves. They're very open in their brutality. And this is just another good example of that. I think this is the most we've seen of Jaime, right? Up to this point.
Yes.
It's hard to separate from the Jaime I know later on in the series, but so far have we even really had a proper conversation like this with Jaime in the books?
No.
We haven't, right? So it's so wonderful. I absolutely love this. And Jules also said that at these moments keep me neutral about Kat. I don't love her, but I don't hate her either. And like we've gone through, we've talked about this. You slog through Kat chapters, or else you soar. They're tricky. They are tricky. But yeah, of course, at the end of this chapter, then she summons Brienne and the sword. So you're left with that nice cliffhanger at the end of this chapter.
I mean, why didn't Kat know the truth about Brandon's death? I
don't know.
There is this thing here. Well, the reason that nobody really knows, particularly Kat in this chapter, why what about Jaime killing Aerys and the you know the conditions around that and the scene that happened, because Ned loved Robert so much that he just wanted to cover that up, or didn't want to acknowledge that happened. Or
well, it's like the question I have: why wasn't Robb called Bran? Like, why is Robb called after
Robb? Yeah.
Baratheon? Why isn't he called? Why isn't he called Rickard or Bran? Like, are they named in the order of who Ned loves the most?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't it be the other way? Like, shouldn't it be named after Rickard, then Bran, and then Robert?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really odd that she's Nedbert confirmed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, it is odd that, like, because surely he, like Ned, would have been looking for any opportunity to justify why he goes after Lyanna, to justify, you know, why he was in a situation where, you know, he ended up straying and having this bastard kid. Surely telling her that story of what happened to his brother. But, you know, it all goes back to Benjen then. Why does Benjen have to go to the wall? There's so many unanswered questions with the Starks.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to that idea. We think we know these people, but we really don't know them. And there's as many mysteries about them as there are. Like, potentially the Lannisters are the ones that we know the most.
Yes. Yeah.
And the implications of that are horrific in and of themselves, but like they're potentially the least ambiguous family.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the Starks, there's so many questions with the Starks, and I completely forgot that she didn't know this story.
Yeah, me too.
Because when I read this the first couple of times, I was so focused on Aerys and, you know, the burn them all, and Jaime really hates being called Kingslayer, you know. But then, you know, will he become Kinslayer as well? Not just Kingslayer. And also, as we move from Kingslayer into potentially a Kinslayer chapter from Theon, you know. But yeah, so that's it for Cat for me, but definitely my favorite chapter this week.
Very emotional, definitely. Very insightful. Lots of history.
Very like, and it comes along at the same kind of point as that Ned and Cersei chapter did in A Game of Thrones as well.
Cat's dead inside from here. This is when she becomes Lady Stoneheart, before she becomes Lady Stoneheart.
He writes her grief so well. It's so poignant. It's painful actually. And then moves on to Theon. So we're moving on to Theon 5. Moves on to Theon, who the fear is palpable with this one. The fear is strong. The force is strong and the fear is strong. More nightmares. We went from the last Theon chapter last week with nightmares again. Nightmares this week. Except this time the nightmares are really strong. Potential potential whisperings from somebody else beyond
maybe
the realm, the realm of the physical. He's 2 nightmares here. One before Asha arrives and one after.
There's a lot of dreams going on here, and Bran the Builder is saying that he had a crazy dream last week that molten iron was poured over him. Should I share the dream that I had last night?
Yes.
And I don't dream a lot, or at least if I do, I don't remember it. But I had a dream last night that I was talking to Catherine on Messenger, and just general chit chat. And in the middle of the conversation, George R.R. Martin appeared in our conversation, but rather than typing, he was actually speaking. And he was saying that it was his 80th birthday that day. And I know he's not 80, just weird, random, bizarre dream. And I just froze completely. I couldn't think of what I knew that I wanted to ask him lots of questions, but I couldn't think of what to say because I was just so shocked that George R.R. Martin had appeared in our chat conversation. And Catherine was asking him, what are you doing for your birthday? What's going on at the weekend? Are you thinking of traveling anywhere? Asking him all these questions. And I just completely froze. And he was talking about wanting to go away to Cornwall for the weekend. Anyway, Cat was busy chatting away with him. And later on, I was messaging Kyle at Azora Hype saying, oh my God, you'll never believe what just happened. And I was trying to explain to him that George R.R. Martin, this is still in the dream, by the way, that George R.R. Martin had appeared in our chat conversation. But as I was typing the words to Kyle, it was just coming out blah, 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 like I couldn't type, like the word wouldn't form. It was kind of like exciting and stressful and confusing all at the same time. But when I woke up this morning, it was a really, like, I could remember every detail of it. It was a really realistic dream. It was so freaky.
I'm gonna block Ion for that. Wins coming out in 2029. Where are my moderators?
Well, that would be when he's 80. Oh my God.
The funny thing about your dream, I was saying it to you before he came on, I actually froze in front of him when I met him. I couldn't think. I had about 10 questions, all went. Couldn't, yeah. Really weird. We're not pals though. I was only one of those fan meet and greet things. I'm only interpreting the dream. Get out of that. It probably will be 2029. Things are going, because the reason you told me this is because I got another bloody email today from, I'm not sure if it was the George R.R. Martin newsletter or Amazon or something, saying George R.R. Martin new release. It's like and of course it's like some other thing, it's like some other book. It's like, oh God,
wild cards or something.
It's a wild card story. Anyway, that's fine.
That was so strange though. But anyway, in this chapter, Theon's having lots of anxiety dreams. He's extremely uneasy about everything. Everything's making Theon uneasy. And there's a line in this chapter that I think sums up everything about Theon, like everything about his experience and his character. And it is a very short line. This is never what I wanted. They gave me no choice. That is Theon in a sentence.
Yeah.
I have, as much as a petulant, grubbing, horrible piece of work Theon is, and what makes it funny, I've mentioned this before in the audio version, Roy Dotrice gives him the voice of like a young Michael Caine, which is even more bizarre.
You always supposed to blow the bloody door down. I didn't mean to take Winterfell. I can't do Michael Caine, that's terrible.
But I've got a few questions here. One of the things that's making him uneasy is somebody at Winterfell is killing the Ironborn that he came with. So he feels like there's this, somebody's closing in on him. You know, his Ironborn are found in various different, you know, somebody's basically murdering his men. So who is that? Is that the same person as the ghost at Winterfell later on? Or is it, could it be Usher sneaking out of the crypts at night and just like, you know, on a secret little ninja mission? But somebody is killing his men.
Yeah, my money's on Usher or Reek.
Yeah, maybe Reek. Yeah, haven't thought of that, possibly. But what we get in this chapter is a very clear Theon being classically conflicted between, I want Winterfell, I'm the Prince of Winterfell, this is my seat, I'm never going to leave. He refuses to leave, even though Asha is really quite reasonable with him, and like I said, she could have just bound him up and bundled him out of there. But it's like, okay, if this is what you want to do, then, you know, if you're refusing to leave, you will never leave. And in a way, you know, he doesn't. You know, he from in the very near future, he becomes Reek.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the big thing here is immediately as soon as Asha leaves, he regrets his decision and thinks about, oh my God, she was right. This is Stark's place. This isn't the, you know, this isn't I'm a Kraken. This is nothing to do with the Ironborn. I should be on Pike. So he's, again, extremely conflicted, very confused, very sort of like, I want to be like Ned. I want to be like Rob. But he knows that he's not. He actually wants to be. He doesn't know what he wants, and he's extremely confused and conflicted. But it all comes down to this. I think underneath it all, he's. I have a soft spot for Theon. As I work in my career for many years, I've worked with like troubled young people and troubled young teens who have been through quite traumatic situations in their childhood. And I can kind of recognize a lot of how Theon acts out and the just fucking stupid things that he says and does. And he's a horrible, I'm not saying that I like him, I think he's a horrible character.
Especially the way he treats the girl in this chapter. She's covered in bite marks and
he basically brutally sexually assaults her. But he feels extremely uncomfortable and he knows that he shouldn't be there. It's almost like every fiber of his being feels that he's trespassing on this place and that he shouldn't be there. It's just his boyish ambition that he wants to be Rob. He wants to, why can't he be king in the north, you know, the same as the king in the north? I know he wants to be king of the Ironborn.
But does he? Or is he there because it's home?
It's there because he's hurt. That's how he, you know,
it's home. Like
Theon was taken in the middle of his life, as we know. He's 19 now, and he was taken when he was 9 years old. So he's slightly been more with the Starks than he has ever been an Ironborn. But it's just, he's such a tragic character. I think it's tragic.
So in his dream, he dreams, and again, like with Cat, it's all building up to massive. It's a massive like foreshadowing from where Bran and Osha and everybody is hiding. He dreams of Lyanna and Brandon and Rickard and all these people that have died, and he dreams like he's dining with the dead, and then into the hall comes Robb and Grey Wind, and Robb is wounded with several stab wounds, and who has sent that vision to him? Because he has seen Robb's death here, and his actions are directly responsible for Robb's death in a lot of ways, because he gives power to the Boltons unknowingly. He gives power to the Boltons. In this chapter, just after he gives Reek all that money, and says, "I'll never see him again." No, you won't see Reek again.
No.
You'll be Reek. You won't see him. You won't see him as Reek again. You're dead right. You will never see him again. And he said, "Oh, I'll probably never see him again." And it's like, well, yeah, you won't. And so do you think is that Bran sending him that vision, or Jojen? Who is sending that to him? I wonder. That's what
I mean, it could be Bloodraven. I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is about this is Maester Luwin says, "Look, can we please attach the heads to the bodies and bury them properly in the crypts of Winterfell as befitting Starks?" And Theon just immediately, no, not the crypts, not the crypts, not the crypts. I mean, he says that it's because he wants to. The thing about Theon is he's quite quick on his feet with an excuse. So when Asher berates him about, "You killed the princes," well, that was because I did that in revenge for my brothers. That's bullshit, and we all know that. But he's very quick with the excuses of, like, "This is why I did this." He's all over the place. And he would have found out exactly what was going on if he had agreed with Maester Luwin to bury the bodies in the crypts. It would have been game over. But he didn't.
Because he feels guilty. Do you
buy? And he feels that he needs to put a show on for everybody to see, that he's got this flimsy power that he's holding on to that is just a joke.
And the fact that he watched Reek flay the boys, that's not a clue of who this guy might be. And who his allegiance is to, and all that kind of thing. So I feel that by the end of this chapter, and well, I know we have another couple of chapters to go with him as Theon, but I do feel like we're reaching the end of the road with Theon, as this identity. There's only so far that he can go from here. He is definitely at a crossroads, and he's going to be dragged pulling and screaming down towards one identity that he doesn't want, but it might bring him back around to an identity that he.
So all of this is his downfall. That one thing, taking Winterfell,
and Robb's downfall. It's entirely. So do you buy into the fact that he's a kinslayer?
Well, I think he's damned either way. Similar to what we were talking about with Stannis earlier, something fundamental has been, a line has been crossed that there will be retribution for. Whether or not you hang that on the Miller's boys could actually be, or one of the Miller's boys could actually be Theon's progeny, then yes, that would be a convenient reason. But I think what Theon is dreaming, particularly at the beginning of this chapter, is the whole North is attacking him. The direwolves are chasing him. The weirwoods are scratching his face. It's like he's screaming for mercy, mercy, mercy. But it's like the entire North, and then there's this mounting fear that Raven got to White Harbour. All the ships, they're all coming to, and as soon as they find out what's happened with the princes of Winterfell, he's fucked completely. But ultimately, I think he's going to redeem himself and then sacrifice himself, and ultimately there'll be this redemption story for Theon. I hope there is, anyway.
I think so. I think it'll have something to do with the crypts. Because he'll have to go back there. I think it'll have something to do with that. And let this be a lesson to all of you. Listen to your sister. especially if it's Asha and she's badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for Theon. They're frustrating. Theon's chapters are kind of frustrating.
Yeah, very frustrating.
Yeah, because you know what's coming for him, and yeah, I don't know how I'm going to get through Storm with Theon. Anyway, yeah, so then we're on to the last chapter, and it is Sansa 5, and this is the beginning of the Battle of the Blackwater.
Yeah.
It's a relatively short chapter, actually. I was surprised at how short it was.
Very short.
And to me, this is a very regal moment for Sansa. She's very regal.
Very, yes.
Yeah, she's praying for
very
everybody.
queenly.
Oh, absolutely. And praying for everybody, including Jon, sending prayers to the wall for Jon. It's very it's what you'd expect a queen to do.
Yeah.
She puts aside all her personal vendettas for him and sending prayers to him. And she stands up and refuses to pray then for Joffrey. And I thought, this is great. I'm loving this.
It's kind of like she's doing this instinctively, isn't she? The whole of Cersei couldn't give a flying fuck about what happens to the small folk in King's Landing at all. No consideration for anybody else whatsoever apart from her immediate family and making sure that the Lannisters survive. Whereas Sansa is out and about, she's in the sept, she's sings with the city, she's with the people. She prays for everybody that she's ever known, including Tyrion and including the Hound. I'm just watching my Hound walk into the kitchen, wondering what he's going to do.
Yeah, she's definitely.
Yeah, she's been very. Yeah, she's. Yeah, this is just a stark difference between Cersei as a queen and potentially foreshadowing Sansa as a queen. So this
is Cersei doing putting on like this feast as the battle is.
With everyone starving, yeah, she's just clueless. clueless.
So the big thing here is obviously she thinks about the Hound, and there's a definite crossover between, Sansa the girl and now Sansa who believes herself to be a woman. And I think, it may not be the way we think about it now psychologically, but certainly at the time, it's such a huge moment to go from, before you flower to after. And she definitely takes that on board. And maybe she's taken Cersei's advice on board as well. But Cersei, the big thing I feel is that Sansa is finally admitting there's no such thing as a knight. That she doesn't really, there's a lack of true knighthoods around. And Sansa wonders why Sir Ilyn is there, and Cersei tells her that she'll be thankful of him. She might be thankful of him by the end of the battle. And she also tells Sansa to eat her broth and wait for Simeon Stareyes or Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, to come for her. Now, just Simeon Stareyes was a blind knight. Is that right? He was blind? Is that right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's like Arya, right? And then the Dragon Knight who carried Dark Sister, that could be Arya as well, or it could be Jon, or it could be Mira. So it could be don't depend on these men.
Yes.
This is good. And I do think I am one of the. I'm not. I love Sansa as a character. I do think it's the likelihood of Sansa being on a throne, whether it's the Iron Throne or some other throne at the end, is very, very high. And it would be very interesting if it could be Brienne, of course, the dragon knight, could be Dany, but I think that Sansa could surround herself with very powerful women. But definitely Simeon Stareyes for me is Arya, her blinded knight.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. It's interesting that Sansa never mentions Lady anymore, and she's gone immediately to thinking about the Hound protecting her. So again, just going back to what we were saying in the last Sansa chapter, she thinks about the Hound in that protective way, and she just never thinks of Lady anymore. It's literally like one has replaced the other. So yeah, that's it. It's the beginning of the battle. They're all like, you know, hunkering down in Maegor's Hellfast.
And as Ion says, that's what they're singing, gentle mother fond of mercy. So that's, you know, if Sansa becomes a gentle mother, she will be fond of mercy. She'll need her mercy around her. So yeah, that's that. It's a very short chapter. So it's all gonna next week. It's all gonna kick off with Davos in the middle of the battle. We're reading from Davos 3 to Arya 10. It's our second last week with Clash, and then we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back on April the 8th with a Storm of Swords. So I'll make sure next week to have a schedule for Storm of Swords.
So we've got 2 more weeks on Clash.
Yeah,
and we're taking it, and then we're taking a break.
March and the first week in April. Yeah. So
let's have a look in the chat. Yeah, Jules, absolutely, indeed. Sansa behaving like a real queen. Was Simeon blind night with sapphires in his eye sockets? Yes, up at the wall. Was he up at the wall?
I think
Simeon star eyes. Yeah.
So again, sapphires makes you think of Brienne as well. So.
Yeah. Yes.
So I do think, though, it's Arya. I think Arya will in some way be some sort of protector for Sansa. I'm hoping. Oh, thank you, Jules. Thank you very much. All right. So yeah, next week, Davos 3 to Arya 10 is going to be action packed, and I will have a schedule for Storm of Swords.
Yes, please join us with that. That's going to be huge.
That's going to be a big one. Yeah. We might take a week off in between the two because it's in 2 books.
So what we're doing here is we're just brushing off we've reread these books several times. But for me, it was quite a few years ago before this reread, like way before the TV, before the recent TV series. I think it's probably about at least 4 years ago, 5 maybe, that I've thoroughly read these books several times. So what we're doing is we're just kind of brushing the cobwebs off and trying to refresh where we're up to with for me, the TV series, in a way, because it's split off so much, is a bit of a like, where are we up to in the books rather than the TV show, in preparation for, fingers crossed, Winds of Winter. So we're trying to get this done and get this in before the next book, which obviously we will be analysing and chewing over that. So.
And what I have found with this, with particularly the reread of Clash, is that certain characters are completely overserved by the show. Not necessarily in a bad way, like Jaime, for instance. I forgot up to the chapter this week. It's like, shit, we really didn't know who Jaime was as a character. No. Whereas we get to know him really well from episode 1 in the TV show. But then I feel like Kat is underserved as a character. In the show in a lot of ways. So yeah. But that's it. That's it. We're going. Enjoy your week, everybody. Thank you so much, Claire. Thanks a million to everybody in the chat. Thanks to Bran for tweeting that out as well. You're very good. Maybe I should get Twitter. I'm not sure. Anyway, I will see you all next week. Thanks, Claire. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.